Good evening. Welcome to Diversity in Central Ohio. This is a program of the Community Relations Commission and Mayor Michael B. Coleman. We're here tonight with a very exciting show, a very troubling show for many of our viewers. We're going to talk tonight about human trafficking. But let me begin by introducing some of our guests. To my immediate left, we have Julie Clark, who's the Executive Director of DOMA International.
Yes.
Hello.
Right? Yes.
All right, thank you. And to her left, we have Barbara Freeman.
Yes.
Welcome, Barbara. Happy to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
And to her left, we have Gina Burris. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you.
We start every show here on Diversity in Central Ohio the same way, and that is to ask this question. And we'll ask you first, Julie. What does diversity mean to you?
Diversity. Well, I think to me, diversity is living in community with people who have rich backgrounds and histories and live life completely different from one another, but live it respectfully in a way that you can share and have, differing views and ideas and futures and past, but yet still live in harmony and appreciate and respect one another. That's diversity.
Very nice, thank you. Barbara, how about you? What does diversity mean to you?
To sum it all up, diversity to me would be freedom.
Very nice, very succinct, very good answer. How about you, Gina? What does diversity mean to you?
To me, diversity means tolerance. It means people of many different cultures and backgrounds, but that we can all come together and work together and live together.
Okay, thank you. I want to really dive right into this topic, and as we move along, I want to get to know each of you a little better, but I really want to start off by asking about this topic. We're here to talk about slavery, human trafficking in the world, in the United States, here in Central Ohio. And as I prepared for the show and did my research, and I thought, the numbers would strike me as this is almost an epidemic, but it's something we're not hearing about. It's not on the front page every day. Julie, what is the scope of human trafficking in our community, in our country, in our world?
Well, it's something that is troubling, as you said earlier, because it's the second leading crime in the world. It's a $32 billion industry. Trafficking is something that touches all of us, it reaches all of us, yet people are kind of afraid to talk about it because once you start learning about it, you start to realize just how it exists in our own backyards, it exists across the world. It's something that it's hard to wrap your mind around, and it's also hard to tackle this issue because it takes so many people from all different backgrounds and different, different expertise areas to actually tackle and eradicate slavery. And I know you're wondering, why did she just say the word slavery when she's talking about trafficking? So
yeah, because as I did the research, both terms come up.
That's a strong word. Slavery is a very strong word.
It puts people off a lot, yeah.
So why?
Why is that?
I think, it's a term that, first of all, I always say that the United States government, the International Labor Organization, the United Nations, the European Union, they've all gotten together and decided that the term modern-day slavery is the only thing you could call this issue. They did their research. They also looked at the scope of it and said, knowing the histories of these men, women, children, youth caught up in this, knowing what they go through, there's nothing else to compare it to except to say that it is, in fact, modern-day slavery. So that's why abolitionists use the term slavery, because that's what it is. And then the second half of it is I've known many women that have been caught up in trafficking, and to know their stories, to sit down with them and to hear what they've gone through, there is absolutely no other word you could use for it, is that they have been enslaved.
So I mean, the numbers you give us, this puts us up there with drugs and guns and those kind of crimes in terms of volume. But I mean, right here in Central Ohio?
Yes, it is here in Central Ohio. And when you think about Huckleberry House is a local youth shelter, and they say at any given time, several thousand open cases of youth that are homeless here in Ohio. In Columbus, I'm sorry, not in Ohio, in Columbus. And when you look at statistics from, say, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, for the National Runaway Hotline, they'll tell you that up to 90% of runaway youth will end up involved in the sex trade, and the forced sex trade at that. So when you look at just those numbers of how many homeless youth we even have in Columbus and all of them that will be entering into the sex trade, when you look at the study commission a few years ago estimated that there's 1,800 youth currently right now in Ohio in slavery. When you look at the numbers of how many prostitutes are arrested every year here in just Columbus alone, you start to see that the numbers are staggering, and it's really hard to estimate what that looks like. You know, there's estimates from 21 million, according to the International Labor Organization, all the way up to, like, I've seen 40 million of people worldwide living in slavery. So when the scope is that huge, and it's hard to even estimate that, how do you estimate how many people here in Ohio and Columbus are living in slavery? It is very difficult to estimate. Numbers, statistics are hard. But at the same time, when you've met that many, children and women and even men caught up in this, you start to see that maybe the statistics are actually not even projecting the scope as big as it actually is happening here.
And give us a definition. I mean, you use the term human trafficking or human slavery, modern slavery. What are we talking about?
Well, I always try to simplify it. It's when somebody is using somebody else for their own profit. Okay, so, when you look at the legal definition, the United States has decided to call, to basically write a law for like a standard law. It's the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. So this law kind of says that here you have a person who has, under the threats of force, fraud, or coercion, is using someone for commercial sex. That person is now a trafficker. Or if somebody purchases, or if somebody participates, or if somebody actually harbors that person. If you've participated in that act, somehow you are a trafficker according to U.S. law. And then if there's a youth involved in that commercial sex act, you don't even need the force, fraud, or coercion piece with that. It can just be somebody using a youth for commercial sex.
As awful it is for people watching to think about, is youth often a component of this?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the average age of entry into prostitution is 12 to 14. So if that's the average age of entry in the United States, 12 to 14, and we just heard the legal definition is somebody in a commercial sex act, and if somebody else is orchestrating that, that tells you that, there's that many people living in this. Yeah, it's a huge problem for youth, absolutely.
Well, let me ask our other guests, Barbara. You and Gina have stories to tell, and we just appreciate you coming on our show to talk, to be honest, because it's such a serious concern. Yes. Could you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you connect to this story?
Well, for me, it started at the age of 16. I had already...
You are a survivor.
Yes. Yes,
both you and Gina are survivors.
Yes.
So you started at 16. This started at 16 for you.
Well, becoming a part of trafficking.
Okay.
And a part of the slavery, because it's both the same to me. I started at the age of 16, and I was introduced to crack cocaine through an older man putting crack in my marijuana. Mm-hmm. Never did I know that it would lead me to prostitution, which they call soliciting. Mm-hmm. I was introduced to it by a man telling me to have another girl to take me out in the streets and to show me, what to do, because I had to make something happen. The getting high was just not, the getting high. And being 16 years old, there was I was in an abusive home, there was no attention, or anything. And so I started seeking outside validation. And where I found it at was in an older man, 12 years older than me, introducing me to crack.
Can I pause for a moment and say that, that's why it's such a problem for youth, is that the recruiters, the traffickers that are getting young girls into this, they know what to look for. They're predators. They know how to woo a girl. And when I say it's a problem in Columbus, we've had reports from Polaris Mall, from the Tuttle Mall, of recruiters who don't look like anything that you'd think they would look like. They just look like normal guys or women that were trained on how to recruit, like what Barb was talking about.
Mm-hmm. So somebody saw you as somebody they might be able, with your situation, mm-hmm. as somebody that they might be able to entice mm-hmm. and get involved, and you were looking for validation.
Yes.
We're going to say some more about it. Let me get Gina on mm-hmm. here to say a little bit. What about yourself? You're also a survivor.
Yes, I am. Mine goes back many, many years. It goes back when I was 17, and this happened to have been in the late 70s here. And my story is when I was introduced to a gentleman who was a hairdresser here in Columbus, and he asked me out, and he asked me if I would actually model for a hair show he was having. And, you know, I was flattered. I was 17. That was, you know, hear the word modeling, and it was like, you know, that's what he asked me to do, and I did do that. And then he asked me if I would like to continue doing some modeling. His friend had a studio, and we could go over there and take pictures, and I could pick outfits I wanted to wear. And so I did that and took pictures, you know, with different outfits on, and they put together a portfolio. I did get called out on a couple different jobs, but I never saw the actual pictures. They said they were going to, you know, modeling for catalog, like a jean catalog, different pictures like that. Well, there was one time when I was with another girl, and the one gentleman Gary pulled out cocaine, and we started doing the cocaine. And it was about 10 o'clock that night, and he told us to get ready, that he had a job that he wanted us to go out on. And, you know, we thought, 10 o'clock at night, where are we going? But he said, just get dressed. And he took us downtown to a hotel down there. And he said we were going to have dinner with two businessmen, two Japanese businessmen, and we did. And then he took us aside and told us that we would make $300 more if we went up to their rooms. And at the time, we were doing the cocaine, and we were getting kind of hooked on it. So we did that, and from that day he gave us both pagers. That's what we had back then, and he told us to keep the pagers on. And then when he called, that we were to call back in, and he would have a appointment, a date set up for us, and that we were to we'd get picked up. He had somebody that would pick us up, and then he set us up in an apartment. Actually, it was called the Oliver Building. It was on Main Street, down towards Reynoldsburg, and there was apartments over there. And I just remember that sign. I remember seeing that sign. And so he set myself and another woman up in an apartment, and it was nice. And he, at that time, he told us that we would give him half of everything we made. So we would give him half of the money, and we were spending the other half on the cocaine he was selling, because he was also selling us the drug. So we ended up working for the drug and he ultimately in the end got all the money. So this continued on until the business got busted. It was a legit business, and the office was in Gahanna. It was Chic Modeling and Escort Service here in Columbus. This was about 1979. He got busted for different charges. It was in the paper. My dad picked it up and saw it. Of course, he was
Were you still a juvenile at that time?
I was still a juvenile. I was still going to high school.
So your name wasn't mentioned?
To this day, I don't know. My dad had the paper. I had told him I was working at a marketing service because, of course, the shame and guilt was there.
You had quite a normal childhood.
I had a normal childhood. I grew up on the east side of Columbus, went to high school, was doing good at high school for a while until, I started involved in this, and so Dad told me to get out of town.
So what was it that pulled you away from, as you understand it today?
As I understand it today, I was seeking attention. I was, I was young. There were 6 kids in our household. My parents, they were good parents. They did the best they could, and my dad, they provided for us, and it was just my own. It was my own working out things with myself. I think teenage girls, it's just embedded in them, and that's why I know that that's why they're so vulnerable, and that's why Barb mentioned about her vulnerability and my vulnerability. That's the.
So that's typical, you're saying?
That's typical because they know. These people are trained.
Well, yeah, they're professionals at the art of seduction and to getting girls roped into this. They use things like iPods now, and they're doing the same things as they always have done, except they're just getting smarter at it. They're getting better.
It strikes me that both stories involve addiction. Is addiction a common element of trafficking?
It's one of the methods of control. It's one of the methods of making sure the girls stay around and come back. It's something that is used as a way to keep them in the business.
So it becomes the literal chains.
It does. Yeah.
The slavery itself.
Yeah.
So both of you were young, teenagers. So this, I know, is a part of it that is so concerning us, to know that our teenagers are out here. So they may be having trouble at home, they may not. So the predators are looking for anybody that might be suggestible, vulnerable, wanting something more in their life, and maybe not feeling like my life is having things for me.
Right.
So this is part of what made you get involved to start DOMA.
It is.
What is DOMA? DOMA, tell us what DOMA is.
DOMA means home in several languages, and like domicile, Dumo, Duomo. DOMA means roof in another few languages. And for me, I was involved in orphan care across the globe for a while, where I'd visit orphanages. Since I was a young girl, since I was 14, I started visiting orphanages and just seeing the orphan cycle perpetuate itself. Girls that are 14 or 15, having children and then abandoning their children to the state. And I started asking the questions, well, what if we could keep the moms with their babies? What if we can keep women from, basically empowering them to take care of their children? And when I started learning more about trafficking, I saw it happen in an orphanage right before my very eyes. I saw a trafficker come, and a little girl I was playing soccer with out on the soccer field ran in to the orphanage, and she came back out in a little cut-off shirt and tons of makeup on her face, and her hair was all done, and she left with this businessman to go to Moscow for the weekend. And I thought to myself, this is happening to vulnerable women and girls all over the world, and boys and men too. I can't leave them out because it does happen. There's labor trafficking, there's sex trafficking, but it was this that really brought me to a point of realizing something needs to be done about this. We need to really fight against this issue, because you can empower girls and women to be able to get to a point where these predators aren't able to reach them. And so that's what DOMA does here in Columbus. We work hand in hand with Judge Herbert's Catch Court, and you'll hear about that a little bit later. It's what I call a rescue effort. There's different ways to reach girls and women and boys and men caught up in this, and Catch Court is one of the ways that Columbus has given it support to actually say, this is a population that we want to pour time, resources, and effort into. And so DOMA works alongside with Judge Herbert to help him organize the volunteers and the donations and things that come in for these amazing women. Yeah.
So the two of you are Catch graduates.
Yes.
So I'm happy to hear that. Because as being survivors, being a Catch graduate means that you found some help. Something happened.
Yes.
Some help found you. You found help. How did what does DOMA, what is Catch, and all of this? I mean, it has a real significance, it seems to me, for your life.
Well, it's awesome. And what I can say about DOMA and Catch Together is that the love and the support, there's a lot of pain behind what I've been through. My voice was not heard. I felt unworthy. I felt nobody cared. When this program came about, I said, wow. I said, there has never been a program or organization like DOMA to ever step up to help a prostitute.
You said you didn't feel like anybody loved you?
I felt very unworthy.
Unworthy of love.
Yes.
We have a call. I hate to interrupt, so let's go to the caller and see what they have to say. We'll come right back to you. Caller, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering, a lot of times you hear about the violence associated with the control in human trafficking. Is that true or not?
Yeah,
yes.
Yes, that is very true. Along with being enslaved with prostitution, I've been raped over 17 times within itself.
So force is, so that's certainly violence.
Yes.
Rape is violence. It's not about sex. It's about violence, about power and abusing people. Yes. So we want to be clear. And I thank our caller for that great question. Gina, what else would you say about violence?
I would say also, along with that, is that when I know that when I would not do what was, required of me when I wanted to, maybe if I didn't want to, leave and go out on the street at the time I was tired or something. If I was with a person that was, controlling me, there would be violence. There was also the time.
Hitting, physical
yeah,
hitting?
hitting physically. A lot of verbal abuse. There's a thing that there's a thing they do is they tear you down, and they say tear you down to build you back up. And for myself, there's also rape involved. Yes.
So I hear that. I hear the pain of that. That the memory is still there and is very fresh. 17 times. So they start out by enticing you while you're young, and then trying to get you involved in drugs. But at some point, there's a turn.
Well, they start to labeling you as being you belong to them. They own you. Slavery. And it's like,
What do they say? What would they say to you?
It's actually been told to me, like, I own you. Like, you smoked up this, or, if you even been, in the house for a day, 2 days, it's like, I own you, you need to go out there and make something happen, and then when you don't and they find you, they'll beat you down.
So if you try to get away,
Yeah, they'll pay someone to come and look for you, they'll have, other girls out there on the street to jump you, or, it's a lot of violence along with that.
But it's an interesting topic. Why don't you walk away? What keeps you? Gina, what kept you there all those years?
Well, my life, it took a lot of twists and turns. When I was telling you about when I was 17. When I was 18, I took a Greyhound bus and went to California. My dad told me that I better, go ahead and leave because of what was going on. So I lived with my sister for a while out there, tried to get things right, but some things happened out there that drew me back into that lifestyle. I ended up moving back here, and I got married and had kids, and then several times in my life I did get clean. I went to rehab and got clean for a while and wasn't doing that. Was working regular jobs. What ended up happening to me is that the shame and guilt that I carried all the years, the shame and guilt was never worked on. And I know today that is what kept me going back. And ultimately, once I went back to the drug, the drug starts, then the trafficking goes right along with it, because you're right back where you started from. There's going to be sooner or later that you run out of the money you went back with, and you're still, so the drug and the trafficking go hand in hand. And then once you're deep into it, the shame and guilt even gets bigger and higher, then you don't go back home. You leave everyone who does love you, and you're still out there searching, but you're addicted to the drug. So then the desperation sets in, and then you're right back where you started from as an older person. You're not 17 anymore. You're 25, then maybe you're 35, then you're 45.
I have an observation too about that. We have some of our ladies that were trafficked into this when they were, ages 8, 9, 10, 11. Their families traffic them. Sometimes it's a generational thing too. So you have, if your mom's the one selling you, if your mom's the one that's the supply, so that's all you know. That's your whole world. So if that's your whole world, you just can't leave, and something's not right. That something's not, not right with the way that your life is, but you don't know there's people out there that really want to help. Social services misses a lot.
We have a caller.
Oh, caller.
We've been keeping them waiting. Caller, do you have a question or a comment for our
Thank you
guest?
for waiting.
Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I guess my question is, I'm watching this and I'm listening to this, and I'm wondering, these people, it seems like that if they'd go to the police, what would the police say? Would the police be able to help them? Or how would they be treated? How can they try to escape? If when they leave, they get beaten and raped. How do they get to the police or get to safety?
Good question.
Thank you.
Who wants to answer that? Gina?
I'll start that. When I know for myself, when I did go to when I was out there, some things were going on that I witnessed that that really, I mean, pretty much horrified me. I was scared. I knew that the cardinal rule on the street is that you never go to the police about anything. But I was very fearful, and I did.
What's
pull
the other
over.
part of that? If go to the police, but if
Go
you
to
do,
if you do, you might as well. You might lose your life.
Might lose your life.
Yes, but I did, and when I went and told them what I believed was going on, they told me that if I came and said something to them again or called and made a report, that they were going to take me to jail, and just called me, you know, pretty much a crack addict. Now,
That's not the case now anymore.
That's not the, no. That's what I wanted to say. We have now that they're getting educated more and more. We actually have. There's a officer that his wife works with, does a lot of work, and I don't know. Can I say his name? No. There's an officer that's awesome, and officers are really getting more onto it because of our. Judge Herbert and our catch court in DOMA and everything. So it's getting to be where they are seeing people, the women, as humans and looking into what's happening behind it instead of just what's
There's
up
a
front.
local coalition of people, a lot of agencies here in town. You'll hear more about that second half of the show. There's a hotline number, a local hotline, which they'll put up on the screen for you, to call in for tips now. People that are really serious about responding to these issues right away, immediately. We have a whole team of people in this coalition that can, you know, even interpret. They need legal help right away. So we'll talk about that too later. But it is something that this coalition, it's Central Ohio Rescue Restore Coalition. We're all working and we're fighting hard to get that number out there so that the girls and the youth know that there is a way out. We want to reach our hand out to you and help.
We're getting close to the end of our segment, so I want to, before you leave us, Gina and Barbara, I want to, what words do you have? What do you want to say? What do you want to tell people about what you've been through and what you know about this program, and what messages do you have for folks? Your stories are just compelling and incredible, and your courage for being here is huge, so I want to make sure before we leave you have that opportunity.
Okay. What I would want to say to any young lady or anyone that you know, has a story like mine or going through some of the similar things is that, you know, there is another side. It's another side to it. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that I started when I was 16 and I'm 40 years old. I've been sober for 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years. I've walked the streets for many of years. I mean, many of years thinking that, you know, that it was okay, that it was a victimless crime, you know, not knowing that I was the victim. You know, today I have a beautiful home, I have a car, a bank account. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So life is actually turned over for me. You know, when I surrendered, you know, one of the things is to surrender. You know, give yourself a chance at life. Do something different. You know, there are people that care. The drug dealers and, you know, the men that are out there, you know, recruiting women, that's not your family. You know, that's not the ones that love you. There are actually people that, you know, that really care. And that's what helped me to change my life.
Thank you, Barbara.
Gina, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I would. A lot of what Barbara said, you know, is what I would say also. And I just know that the message that I have to women out there of all ages is that don't be afraid to tell somebody. Don't be afraid to let the fear go, just to get somewhere. There's places you can go just to get somewhere, and just start by telling somebody that will listen to you, and just don't be afraid, because once you get freedom, you don't have to be afraid of anybody or of anything anymore. And I just know that the message for me is to especially target the young people, young girls. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. So, thank you.
Well, it's about time for us to go to break, but I just want to just take this moment to say to both, Julie's going to be with us on the second segment, but you have shared something very important, Barbara, you and Gina, with us today, not just with us, but with our community. Yes. And we want to thank you for that. It takes help, and it takes some courage, and prayer, a lot of things happening for you to have a success story. And I think people need to know today that there is hope. Yes. There is hope for the young girls out there today. And we have them in Central Ohio.
Yes. That's right.
and they need to hear your voice. So thank you for being on the show, and we hope our audience will just stay with us. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back with our next group of people that are working on these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.